Oasis, do you know what I mean? How we did the artwork and what it all means. I'm Brian Cannon, this is Microdot, welcome back. On the table in front of me here today, I've got material that relates to the creation of the sleeve, right from the initial concept sketches that I sent down to Noel in London in 1997, a book of photography that I based the style of the sleeve on, outtake shots of the band that you've never seen before from the day itself, mock-ups of the artwork that's slightly different to the finished thing, promotional items that were used to promote the record clearly. The local rag, the Wigan Evening Post, even got them on the front page. That's the original from the day. So that's it. I'll just talk through each piece individually and show you how we did the artwork. Looking at the credits on the back, I often get asked, funnily enough, what's a Microdot sleeve? Well, a Microdot sleeve simply means a sleeve created by us, Microdot. It says here, a Microdot sleeve designed and directed by Brian Cannon. And what that means is, not only did I design the type and the text and all the rest of it, I directed the photography because I obviously came up with the ideas. I would then brief a photographer. In this particular case, it's Michael Spencer Jones. I did work with various different photographers throughout this project, but I would commission the photographers, and it was the photographer's job then to realise my vision into the sleeve image that we created. You'll find links below in the description to the Microdot website, which contains lots of stuff that you'll see in this video, like the outtakes, the promotional material, the original posters, and there's a new illustration print that I've done. That's bang new, out tonight, limited edition of 100, annotated illustration of the sleeve itself. So I'll start the story with this, Lasagna Fanzine, which was the original and best Oasis fanzine from back in the day probably. You have to bear in mind that this was prior to the internet and social media, so there was no Facebook pages, no Facebook groups, or anything like that. So fans, to discuss and share ideas, would do their own fanzines, and this was one of them. In this 1997 copy of Lasagna, there is an interview with me, which I completely forgot all about until I started raking through all this stuff. So I'll read you a bit of it. They start off by saying, Brian Cannon, the world's best record designer. Thanks, guys. Talked exclusively to Lasagna. Thanks for your time. So it says here, do you know what I mean? Whose idea? And it says, or I say, Noel came up with the crowd scene. He wanted some sort of religious inference, but we put the mockers on that. Liam didn't want anything religious involved because he thought it might upset a few people, and it's not about pissing people off, it's about turning people on. Right, well, there's a couple of things here then. Noel came up with a crowd scene idea based on the lyric in the song, All My People Right Here, Right Now. Like I say, we decided against the overtly religious theme because it can just get a bit controversial and get up people's noses, and they just weren't like that kind of band anyway, you know. And this kind of leads on to the concept of the sleeve itself. So if you look at the sleeve, it's obviously a shot of the band, all staring straight at the camera, surrounded by a crowd of people, none of whom are looking at the band, which would have been unimaginable in 1997. Wherever they went, chaos broke out. They were the biggest thing in the world. They were just massive. The point was, well, what are they looking at? And if you look to the back sleeve, you see my mate, Mick Maguire, leaning out of the window here, as the preacher. So the concept behind this is, whilst wherever Oasis normally went, people would be screaming and idolising them as false gods. Don't idolise false gods was the message. And the false god in this case isn't the band, it's Mick Maguire on the back sleeve, my mate from Wigan, who is playing the part of the preacher. Right, and then what's Mick looking at? If you look on the inside sleeve, you see his point of view, which is all the crowd looking up to him as opposed to the band on the front. So it's like a three-dimensional view of the same scene. So before we ever get to a shoot situation, first thing is we've obviously got to have the idea or the concept approved by Noel Gallagher. So I drew out these concept sketches, and these are the originals from 1997, and with this fax cover sheet, because there was no internet to email people, or there probably was, you know, but not as we know it today. So this is the original fax that went down to Ignition Management, Oasis Management Company. And it says on the front here, Dear Marcus and Noel, follows rough sketches and ideas for, do you know what I mean? I know it's very rough. If you need any further information, do not hesitate to contact me. Love and peace forever, Brian. Now, it was a company policy at that time at Microdot that whoever we sent a fax to, regardless if we knew them or not like these, they would all be signed off Love and Peace Forever. There's actually a fax here that we sent to Wigan Council getting permission to do this, or just clearing it with them for the day, and that's signed off Love and Peace Forever as well. As is the fax that I sent to the Greater Manchester Police, because we had to get them involved to look after it for the day because there was that many crowds building up. They got a fax saying Love and Peace Forever at the end of it. Anyway, I digress. So these here are the original sketches and concepts that I sent down for Noel and Marcus to look at. And they are very, very basic, but you kind of get the idea. All shot in 35mm, 1600 ASA black and white. And it mentions a crowd of 30 extras, all dressed in 1984 style George Orwell dark battered suits, and overall sort of Beatles by the fence on the Blue album. If you look on, I'll drop a picture of that in here, that kind of vibe. Preacher's point of view, crowd looking at him, but the band looking that way. The maniac preacher, not necessarily religious, it says though, waving book from upstairs terraced house window. So that was the back sleeve. But it does mention in that Lasagna interview that I did there that I based the style of photography on a Dutch photographer called Ed van der Elsken. Now I picked this book up whilst I was in Amsterdam with my sister in the late 80s. And you'll see from it that it's very grainy, very black and white, very gritty, very real, like a photojournalistic kind of style. Also in this book, I found the image for the sleeve for Ash 1977. That's in there that we spun sideways. So that came from this as well. So that was the style that I wanted to follow, which was black and white, although the sleeve itself is actually duotone. It's got a blue hue to it as well. But that's where we're coming from with the style. Okay, so we've got the concept, we've got this idea that, you know, it's about worshipping false gods, the band in a scene whereby nobody's looking at them and looking at something else. But next on the list is obviously a location. Where are we going to actually shoot this? Now, I chose Wigan because all the people, all the extras, are family and friends of mine, like they always were, like I always used. I never used professional models or actors or anything like that. Always family and friends. So I thought it'd be easier to take the band to where the extras were than the other way around. They were all based in Wigan pretty much, so we decided to shoot it in Wigan. We did a series of test shots, and if you look at my notes, shot on location in Wigan Terrace Cobble Street. That created more problems than was actually necessary, because if you think about it, the Cobble Street, with the band in, you couldn't see the Cobble Street anyway. I mean, there were back then cobble streets in Wigan, and we did do some test shots there. And another problem we thought of was, if it's a street like a regular street, cars will be coming and going all the time, so you've got to close that off. So that's how we happened upon this location, which was obviously also in Wigan, and was round the corner from Bird Street in Ince, which is the cobble street we were testing, when we saw this. Known locally in Wigan as the Blind Steps, because I think historically, way before my time, I think there was some kind of school for the blind or something there, but that was donkeys years ago. At the time we shot it, this was actually a gym, a proper old school, like boxers gym, and we actually shot in the gym an acceptance speech. Oasis had won some award that they couldn't be at, and we did a photo shoot in the gym, sorry, a film shoot in the gym of them accepting the award. There's some outtakes of that, I'll show you there later actually. But what this wide outtake shot shows is you can actually see all elements of the sleeve in one go together. You've got Mick leaning out the window, the band looking at you, all the crowd, and you can actually see how few people there actually are there. But that was like this alleyway, so we didn't have to close the street off at all actually. But we did need to get the police involved, because as I mentioned earlier, at this time, Oasis were just a huge colossus. And to make sure this ran smoothly, because at the end of that alleyway was a main road running through Wigan, we knew that once the word got out, the crowds would start to develop, and that's exactly what happened. And again, you'll see some shots later that I'll show you. Behind the camera, just chaos breaking out. So we actually had to pay the police, and I think there's a budget here breakdown I'll go through as well in a bit, and the police bill for the day was £1,000. There's only 3 of them. And we had to pay the police £1,000 to police the event for the day. Next up is the actual extras themselves. As I mentioned, I think there was 34 people in that crowd, all of whom were from Wigan and friends and family of mine. And this here, I found this again just recently while I was doing the research for this video. I'd forgotten all about this. And this is a list of all the extras who appear in the shoot. And next to each name, you'll see either C, M, or F. Child, male or female, and on the other side you'll see their age. Now the purpose of this was so the stylists knew exactly how many clothes to bring and for what sex and for what age group, because everybody was dressed. I mean, you can't really see it from there. But that was kind of the point, I guess. Everybody's just sort of dressed in a bland, uniform kind of fashion. Funnily enough, my dad turned up that day wearing a snorkel parka, almost identical to the one that Liam got on. And Liam was joking with him, "Oh, you'll have to take that off, pal. I'm wearing that outfit." I'll drop a picture in here of my dad wearing the outfit. It's not on that day, but a lot more recent. But my dad wearing that same outfit that Liam told him he had to get out of. He was going to get out of it anyway to get into this gear, but that's that. So yeah, so there's the list of extras. The youngest person on the day was Alex Gore, who was 2, who was my friend's niece. All the way, there's Catherine Cannon, my niece, who was 5. There's my mum in there, where's she gone? Helen Cannon, and my dad, Brian Cannon. And the eldest person on the shoot was Phyllis Hart, who was 86. So we've got the concept, we've got the location, we're going to shoot it in this alleyway in Wigan in front of the steps. Next, what's got to be approved was the budget that we'd have to send to the record company. So it wasn't just a case of taking a photograph in this case, because there was a lot of logistics to consider. And if I look at my again, facsimile transmission to Emma Greengrass of Creation Records, love and peace forever again on there. Emma was great. She was one of the good guys at the record companies. I mean, we kind of regarded the record companies as the enemy half the time, but Emma was cool. But anyway, on this budget that we had sent for approval, catering and day room. Now what we did was, we actually hired the Bellingham Hotel in Wigan. Like a wedding function suite for the day. So the models and extras had somewhere to get changed in the morning. And at lunchtime, we all retired, the whole cast, back to the Bellingham Hotel where they all got fed. And also on the list is travel and van hire. So that would have been, we hired a coach, even though it was only about a mile away. You know, we obviously had a load of people to transport, so we did that. And interestingly enough, Liam, the band were in a minibus, like a little, you know, mini tour bus kind of thing. But going back to the hotel for lunch, Liam got on the bus with all the people. And very rarely for that time, because nobody had mobile phones, nobody had a camera on them. But he actually did have a camera, and I don't mean a throwaway thing. He actually had a real camera. And he got on the bus and he was photographing all the extras. And he even photographed the scene itself. I'll drop a picture in here of Liam photographing the scene. In the budget, this one really cracked me up. There's a glazier's fee, £70 glazier's fee, and I can only possibly imagine that was so to take the window out on the back of the gym so Mick could lean out of it. That must have been the glazier's fee for taking out a piece of glass and putting it back in after we finished the shoot. Incidentally, that shot of Mick doing his ranting was shot the day before, so we could concentrate just on him. He was there on the day present to give everybody something to look at, and he was ranting wildly out the window. I gave him a book, I've still got it somewhere, and the book was like a real old-fashioned one, all tips, household tips, so he was shouting in a real sort of tone crier voice. Stylist and outfits, we spent £1,300, which was a lot back then for that, I think. The police bill, £1,000, which for a couple of hours work for 3 copies, I think. Well, they wouldn't have been getting paid that, would they? Extras fees, £900. Accommodation, certain people had to be put up. So yeah, so this was pre-shoot. This was the budget that we got approval from the record company. Then once that was approved, it was, and we'd obviously done the test shots, it was time to get on with the shoot itself. We all met, all the extras and the band, at the Bellingham Hotel, which we booked the function room, like I said. All the extras got changed into the costumes, the very drab suits and very plain looking clothes, so they'd all sort of sink into the background. And off we went, the band in a minibus to the shoot site and us lot in a coach that we'd hired. We did actually break at one point. We nipped to a pub round the corner, the Crispin Arms. When we walked in, the girl behind the bar just burst into tears as soon as Liam Gallagher walked in. Literally just started crying, couldn't control herself. I've got a shot of it somewhere. I was sat in the pub just having a pint of Guinness, so I'll throw that in here as well. But whilst it looks dead ordered, and on the actual outtake, you know, just a few of us stood in the alleyway, behind the camera, it was mayhem. Word got out. People were bunking off school, I've heard years later on. The word just got round town super quick, as you'd imagine, even though nobody had a mobile phone. The local paper turned up, and they got a shot, which they put on the front page of the paper, obviously. Like I said, it was like the Beatles coming to town back then. But it was a pretty straightforward shot, really. You know, the band were just stood there looking at the camera. It's effectively a still life. Now, a Microdot trait back in the day was we would never use Photoshop, whereas in actual fact, there is quite a bit of Photoshop in this. Just a bit behind Gwigsy there. Compared to on the original photograph, there was a big gap behind his head. So we had to drop in. The same guy's on there 3 times, actually. 1, 2, 3. My sister and my niece Catherine are there. They're dropped in. My mate Mike Gore, we put him in there because you couldn't see him on the sleeve, and he'd had his ponytail cut off specially for the day, and I thought, if I don't get him in, he'll be absolutely furious. So we got him in there. Dave Halliwell's dad. Dave Halliwell used to manage the Verve. There's his dad there. He isn't actually there. And the copper. The copper isn't actually there on the actual master shot itself. He got dropped in there. I just thought it'd be interesting. You know, even the police was sucked into this, this worshipping the gods kind of thing. But we've actually got mock-ups here showing the police in a different place. If you look at this here, there's the copper there, and he actually moved slightly to the right in the end. We put him there. But on this particular one here, you can see he's walking up the steps. And I think that looks terribly photoshopped anyway, so it's a good job we changed that. There you go. There's me dad again, getting into his, that's one of the 3 sleeves that it was on, the others being, some might say, on the master plan along with my mother. So if I'll just scoop up all these outtakes that we've got here and go through all of these individually, because there's some cracking shots here actually. A wide shot of the full scene, Liam squatting down there, but you can see Mick Maguire up in the window. There's the band actually in the gym, sat in the boxing ring. Do you see what I mean about it being it's not like one of these posh gyms these days where everybody goes, oh, signs up to go, then doesn't bother going after 6 months or whatever. This is a proper old school gym. Ernie Gradwell's gym, it was. There's Liam with the police. Even the police were getting his autograph. That's how big Oasis were at that time. They were paid the police to look after the shoot, escort, make sure nothing went wrong, yet they're getting the band's autograph as well. There's me with a couple of the extras, Liam in the gym, and that's, I think I mentioned on the extra, Phyllis Hart, who was 86, that's Phyllis there, and there's a picture of Liam dancing with her, which I'll show you now. There you go, there's Liam dancing with Phyllis. Beautiful shot. He's such a lovely guy. Liam again here with Pat Gore. You know, Mike Gore is a great friend of mine, and a lot of his family are on this sleeve. And there's the mother Pat, who, you know, thought Liam was wonderful. Liam with some more of the extras. And that leads me to this shot here, which is an unpublished shot of Liam Gallagher taken on the day. This has never been seen anywhere. When Bonehead saw this, he remarked that it's just one of the best pictures of Liam Gallagher he's ever seen. It looks totally punk rock, even though he's not got spike hair and a safety pin through his nose. I know what he meant. It looks almost like Sid Vicious in his sort of attitude. That is actually a new print that has been released today and can be seen on the Microdot website. So go along and have a look at that. Bonehead there with Helen Gore, another one of the Gores. There's Liam again in that little child crying with a copper stick in his head in the corner. You can see here just the number of people that was beginning to build up. I mean, this was nothing like it in the end, but we stood having a break. There's me, the band security there, Terry, and I forget the other guy's name, but Liam and Noel having a chat with me, having a break there. An aerial shot of the band walking down the alleyway, just as we were getting some shots of them. It's a beautiful silhouette shot of, I mean, many of these shots were taken by Mike Gore, who was one of the extras. Again, unusual that somebody should actually have a camera on them, because back in the day, to do that, you'd have to go out and buy a roll of film. It's not like you could just shoot them on your phone. So that was the day done, you know, and it was quite a long day and we were all exhausted. The band shut off straight away after the shoot itself, but we all went back to the Bellingham Hotel and moved from the function room into the bar area, and I think we wound up in the Wigan Pier nightclub that night, all of us. Yeah, it was just a tremendous day. You can just imagine, can't you? It was a blessing to be involved with that band at that time and, you know, just get the opportunity to do all this. So we've got the shots in the can, and then, like I said, there was some Photoshop work involved in filling those little gaps in that you just don't quite notice on the day itself. You know, once you analyse the picture in the cold light of day, we started moving a few people around. But I noticed on my notes, I said that the logo was going to be, well, if you look at the notes, the logo's in a different position, and I said it's going to be a luminous orange. And I think there is a mock-up knocking about somewhere. I think Brian Garcia might have it, where it is luminous orange. But on the finished thing, it's a foil-blocked silver. logo, which kind of just shows where the band were at that time in terms of budgets, because that cost quite a bit more to do, obviously, than just having a printed logo in the rest of the sleeve. So that was unusual. So we've got the front sleeve image all sorted out. We've got the little bits of Photoshop going on. We've agreed on a foil block logo. In a bag, in a packaging done. Labels. Always, a lot of designers used to overlook the labels. I think it's an integral part of the design package, especially on a record, obviously. I think this looks great. Do you know what I mean? So all's done artwork-wise. The record's been sold into the shops. The promotional postcards are done. All that's left now is to announce to the public that the record's coming out. Because this was pre-internet 90s, the way it was always done was via street fly posters. So I've got a couple of originals here. I'll just bring them over. And because Oasis was such a gargantuan, massive outfit by this point, they even had 2 different fly posters, which was very rare. And I could never believe that Creation Records let us get away with this. We'd do posters that didn't actually have the front of the record on it. So there's Mick off the back sleeve. I love that shot. That's an original. Like I think I mentioned in the Some Might Say video, you can always tell the original. There's no web address in the corner or, you know, copyright or merchandise company info. That's a 1997 Creation Records street fly poster in mint condition. And that's on the website now as this video goes live. How long it'll last? Anybody's guess. And the other fly poster that went along with that was the actual front sleeve as well. Release date, you know. The idea being, you'd be going into town on the bus and you'd just see 50 of these all plastered along, you know, a wall in any town or city. The idea being for him to be as striking as possible. Oasis, there's the band, new record, when's it out? That's your lot. Again, that's an original, mint condition, framed as well, on the website right now. Microdotboutique.com. Link in the description below to that and all our social media. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, all the rest of it. As always, thanks for your continued interest and support. It means the absolute world to us. Ta-ra.